that you've never listened to radio like this before. It's the voice of happiness. 32 FM 94.9.
After the tactics comes the play.
It's Carter, what's he going to do? Oh!
After the play comes the goal.
Could be the match winner from Lionel Messi. Ronaldo! Aguero, they'll do it. It's a terrific goal.
After the goal comes the uproar. It's sports on 32 FM 94.9.
All right, heavyweight clash went down yesterday in the UEFA Champions League, and also the action continues later today. But from those games that went down yesterday, you tell that it was a magnificent victory for Arsenal Football Club. They are the San Siro, winning by 3-1. Well, you tell that their strikers, Gabriel Jesus and Victor Gyökeres, were both on target in that encounter. And of course, for the football club, they've sealed their ticket into the next round, which is the round of 16 of this year's UEFA Champions League 1 or 2. Their next game is against the 𝐃𝐈𝐒 Almaty at the Emirates Stadium. But of course, for the actions are set to go down later today, Galatasaray will be up against Atletico de Madrid, where Victor Osimhen also was in training. Bayern Munich will be up against the Royal Union St. Gilloise, Chelsea against Pafos, Juventus against the Benfica, Marseille will be up against the Liverpool, Newcastle against the PSV, Slavia Praga will be up against the Barcelona, and also Karabakh will be up against Eintracht Frankfurt. These are the actions are set to go down later today in the world of UEFA. That's UEFA Champions League games across different centers for today. But on the show this afternoon, we take a look at the aftermath of the African Cup of Nations. What happened at the African Cup of Nations? Remember, yesterday we were discussing about the best 11 as it been unveiled, and I can tell you that on the show this afternoon, we take a look at the best 11 as judged by the Confederation of African Football. The players who were the best at the African Cup of Nations. How many Nigerians? How many Moroccans? And how many Senegalese players do we have on the list? Well, I tell you that these three nations were the ones who have their players on the list of the players of the tournament. That's talking about the 11 of the tournament. And also I can tell you that from the world of tennis, Ema Raducanu will listen to her words this afternoon as she was ousted in the early hours of today. She lost that game in the early hours of today to the hands of Anastasia Potapova, who is ranked the 55th in the world. For Ema Raducanu, she is ranked the 29th, and we take a listen to what she has to say. But I can tell you that in the ATP, there has not been any big outstar from the men's game. We'll talk about the world of tennis. But in the women's game, they keep dropping, and Ema Raducanu is the latest to actually drop out of the Australian Open. So what is next? As today is the day 4 of the Australian Open, the first major Grand Slam for the year 2026. Well, all right, you're listening to the voice of Oluwatimileni Sami. So good at the program this lovely afternoon. Just to check the time, it is also 25 minutes before the hour 4 on the PM side. We take a look at all the latest headlines and making the rounds in the world of sport. Reaction from the games that went down in the UEFA Champions League, as well as looking into the games set to go down later today in the world of the UEFA Champions League. But before we go straight to UEFA club competitions, let's start straight from the African scene, where it's all about the African Cup of Nations. From the 11 that was unveiled just in the early hours of today, we have goalkeeper Yasin Bonu, Calvin Bassey, Nikaite, and Mazure, as well as Akafakimi in the defense line. We have a Gueye that's in the midfield. We also have another Gueye from Senegal in midfield. Ademola Lookman also in midfield. Sadio Mane, the MVP of the African Cup of Nations. Victor James Osimhen, who is one of the second highest goal scorers at the African Cup of Nations, as well as the man with 5 goals, 5 games, 7 games, 5 goals. That's for Brahim Diaz. He also makes the short list of the player of the tournament. That's talking about the best 11 at the 35th edition of the African Cup of Nations. So a lot of questions that's also been asked as regards to the starting 11 of this African Cup of Nations, or the best 11 of this African Cup of Nations. And I'll get the thoughts of Dolapo, who joins me on the show this afternoon, to definitely just throw in his own 2 cents as regards this best 11 released by the Confederation of African Football in the early hours of today. Good afternoon, Dolapo.
Well, good afternoon, SAMIES. Good afternoon to everyone who has joined us on the show this afternoon. Well, for me personally, good lineup it looks like. Well, I have some questions for some few names that are in this lineup, and also some questions about some players who are not here, and I feel like they should be there. And the first person that comes to mind has to be Alexander Iwobi of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. To my own knowledge, with what I watched during the African Cup of Nations, it seems to be the best creative midfielder during the last AFCON. He was very good with the numbers of chances he created. When you look at the stats, he is the midfielder that created the highest number of chances in this last African Cup of Nations. It was also the one that had the highest number of chances that led to shots in this competition. That was 13. So it was so good. He had 3 assists in this competition. So I feel like he should be inside this lineup. Although I kind of understand Papa Gueye scored the winning goal for Senegal when they won the African Cup of Nations in the final. But I don't think a goal in the final takes out someone who performed really well in the 6 games that he played for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. I feel like he performed really well for someone like him, and I think he should be there. With all due respect to Papa Gueye, he also performed well during this AFCON. I remember they scored a wonderful goal in the final, and even before the final, I think it was in the quarter-final thereabouts, he also scored a very good goal. But then I just feel like Alexander Iwobi should be there ahead of him. Another place that I have a very big problem with has to be the right back side, where Achraf Hakimi plays. He performed well during this African Cup of Nations, no doubt, but I feel like he's not the best right back we are doing this competition. The 𝐒𝐃𝐈𝐒 from Senegal was so good during this competition. He performed so well for Senegal. He played really well in every of the game that this guy played. If you watch Senegal, plays very well. The way he overlaps, the way he runs, and the way he tackles, and the way he does all of those things are beautiful to see. You would enjoy the way he plays. The 𝐒𝐃𝐈𝐒 was so good. Another person who was so good in this right back position has to be Bright Osai-Samuel of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Bright Osai-Samuel was also very good in the middle of at the right side of the pitch for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. He played so well. If you watch the game Nigeria played against Algeria, he was just the man that won. For me personally, was the one that won that game for the Super Eagles of Nigeria against Algeria. He played in 6 games. The only game he didn't start was the one Ryan Alebios who started against Uganda, and Bright Osai-Samuel was so good for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. He conceded in these first 2 games, but then the other 4 games he played, he didn't concede. So why is Achraf Hakimi starting there? Yes, I understand Hakimi also didn't concede goals. He conceded.
And he didn't play their first 2 games.
He didn't play the first 2 games. Yeah, that's where I'm going to. So he was not there when they considered the goal against Mali. But regardless of that, I feel like he is not the best right back in this competition this year. With all due respect to his name, I expect either 𝐷𝐿𝐾𝐇 or Bright Osai-Samuel to play there. But when you look at every other person, every other place in this list, I feel like CAF have gotten it right. Sadio Mane was the best player of this competition according to them. So kind of understandable that he makes the list. Brahim Diaz scoring 5 goals in his first 5 games, although he went silent in the semi-final and also in the final. But then he was so good during this African Cup of Nations. You can argue about some particular strikers, but the best striker that got to the semis has to be Victor Osimhen. he was the best striker because you look at other strikers like Life, Star. It was so good for South Africa, but then get knocked out.
What about 𝐿𝐶𝐸?
𝐿𝐶𝐸, apart from the group stage, it didn't come to the party in the knockout stage. It didn't come. It was not the man for them. It was so good in the group stage. Against Comoros, he scored an overhead kick. In the third game as well, he scored a beautiful goal. But then it didn't come to the party when it matters most in the knockout stage. And Victor Osimhen, we saw what he did against Mozambique. We saw what he did against Algeria. 1 goal, 1 assist. So I feel like Victor Osimhen deserves to be the number 9 there. And the midfield looks good apart from apart from them not including Alexander Iwobi there. So for me, those 2 names are the only names I would remove there. That is Papa Gui and Achraf Hakimi.
Well, that's for DOLAPO. If you have any that's a counter opinion, you can call into the studio 09062000 to share your thoughts as regards the best 11 released by the Confederation of African Football as regards this year's African Cup of Nations. Let's move away from football, from the African scene, and quickly discuss about tennis. That's from the concluding part of the games that went on in the early hours of today. That's day 4 of the Australian Open, where in the ATP category, Francis Tiafoe was through into the next round as he won his game also 3-1. Alex de Minaur won also 3-1. Alexander Zverev 3-1 and also won. But you talk about Carlos Alcaraz, he also won his game in the early hours of today, 3-to love. Davidovich Fokina, he won 3-2. That was really an intense one. We saw a game of 5 sets in this encounter. You talk about Andy Rublev also through into the next round, defeating Faria in 3-1. So you say that that was a good outing from the boys. When we talk about the men in the Australian Open. But in the women's game, like I said, not a big of an outsider in the men's game, but in the women's game, there are so many names dropping. You talk about the biggest one, Emma Raducanu, who has been dumped out 2-to love. She lost 7-6, 6-2. She lost to the hands of Anastasia Potapova. Let's take a listen to the words of Emma Raducanu. Well, speaking about what is next for her as she is holding her head up high. The words of Emma Raducanu.
I kind of have to leave with my head held high because of the matches I've had here. I don't want to give myself too much of a hard time because I know my preparation going into this tournament. I didn't even know at the beginning if I would be coming to Australia, so it's a positive in that sense. And I think playing at different times is also another challenge, playing at night compared to day. The conditions are very different, and just hadn't really played in these kind of conditions in a minute, so didn't deal with it very well today. I want to be playing a different way, and I think the misalignment with how I'm playing right now and how I want to be playing is something that I just want to work on. I think there are definitely pockets of me playing how I want to play, and it comes out in flashes, which is a positive, and maybe more than certain times in my career in the last few years, but it's not going to fall into place straight away. But the more I kind of work on how I want to be playing, it will be more of my identity every time I step onto the court.
All right, today listen to the words of Emma Raducanu speaking after a defeat to the hands of Anastasia Potapova, who is ranked 55th in the world. But the early hours of tomorrow, the action continues. We'll talk about the Australian Open on the hard courts. Novak Djokovic would be in action later tomorrow. Lorenzo Musetti will be up against Sonego on an all-Italian affair also later tomorrow in the early hours of the day. You talk about Stefano Tsitsipas will be up against Thomas Mack. That's tomorrow. Kasper Ruud will be up against Muna also later tomorrow. Jannik Sinner would be in action. Taylor Fritz would also be in action. In the women's game, who are those ones are said to be in action? Belinda Bencic will be in action. Iga Swiatek will be in action. Naomi Osaka would also be in action. Eleanor Rybakina, she would be in action later tomorrow. But like we said, world number one, she also won a game that was in the early hours of today. But let's leave the world of the Australian Open and talk about football stories. Once again, on the European scene, the UEFA Champions League, the actions that went down yesterday. Tottenham, they won by 2-0, defeating Borussia Dortmund. And of course, you tell that that victory actually was a good one for them. The under fire manager, that's talking about Thomas Frank, says it is such a feeling when we talk about European night at the Tottenham Stadium. Let's take a listen to the words of Thomas Frank speaking first before we go straight to other centers and take reaction from the games that went down yesterday.
I think especially first half you felt there could be a special European night. I think the fans were absolutely great and they were really behind the team, so very happy with that.
Yeah, you asked them and they answered your call. They felt from the off that they were really behind you tonight.
Yeah, I think they were really behind the team. I really liked. I think it was a fantastic feeling. I was thinking standing out there and hear the atmosphere and the energy and how that transmitted to the players. So that was special. I think especially first half you felt there could be a special European night. I think the fans were absolutely.
All right, there you listen to the words of Thomas Frank speak about that. For one man, he got his first start for the season and he was on target. He scored the second goal. But you can also praise one man, that's Christian Romero. He has been scoring lots of goals for Tottenham Football Club this season. But yesterday, the victory was much more familiar for them as they defeated Borussia Dortmund. We were down to 10 men. That's in the first half of that encounter. After Vessen was shown is a matching order, given a red card after the consultation by the video assistant referee. Villarreal lost to the hands of Ajax Amsterdam 2-1. And Sporting CP in Portugal that defeated Paris Saint-Germain by 2-1. What a game this was, the game between Sporting CP and Paris Saint-Germain. DOLAPO, what do you make of this game as no goal was scored in the first half? And in the second half, we saw 3 goals. But of course, it was a Sporting who came out on top, defeating the reigning champions of the UEFA Champions League.
I think you have to give kudos to Sporting CP with the way they played the game yesterday. In the first half of that game, Paris Saint-Germain could have taken the lead. They had 15 shots in the first half of that game, and they could not just convert their chances. Wazari Emery scored the goal in the 30th minute of that game, but it was ruled out for offside. And then Paris Saint-Germain had a whole lot of chances in that game, but they could not convert. And going into the second half, Sporting CP, they tried to get themselves a goal. 𝐒𝐈𝐿 get the goal back, and then you probably would have thought PSG would take all 3 points. But Sporting CP continued with their impressive form at home in the UEFA Champions League this season. They have won all of their 4 games at home this season, and they look like a team that just know how to play against French side in the Champions League this season. If you remember, some weeks ago, some months ago, they defeated Olympique Marseille at the same stadium, and they also went away to play against that French side and also won. So they've been performing so well against the French side this season, and it's good for them, especially for a team that towards the end of last season, they lost at the middle of last season. They lost their coach who was coaching them very well. They lost the coach, and things were looking like they're not going well for Sporting CP. They lost their striker at the start of the season. But the man who has come in to replace Victor Gyökeres, Luis Suarez, have been performing so well. Has been banging in goals week in, week out for Sporting CP. I know he was also the man who scored the late winner for Sporting CP yesterday. And at the moment, they just need to go away to Athletic Bilbao in the last game, if I'm not mistaken, for them to get, if they can get a point or all 3 points in that game, they might just be qualifying automatically to the round of 16, and they might not just be going through the playoff round, which would be very good for Sporting CP. So good for them. They are playing good football in the league. Looks like Porto is the one that will be taking the league this season, because Porto have been so good this season. The defensive line with Thiago Silva, who just joined, and Gaku Kiwa, who left Arsenal for Porto, they've been playing really good football. But they are performing well in the Champions League, and I think getting to the round of 16 of the Champions League would be huge for Sporting CP.
And that's been a huge result for them. Well, at other centers, we saw Real Madrid run riot over Monaco 6-1. Kylian Mbappe was on target to score the brace, but the man of the match was Vinicius Junior. As you could tell that he was at the center of everything. But one man also ended his goal-scoring drought. So that's talking about Jude Bellingham. Let's take a listen. Let's take a listen to what he has to say about the celebration from yesterday's game.
Finally, you scored today.
Did you?
What was that celebration all about?
Well, I mean,
a lot of people say a lot of things, you know what I mean? It feels like anyone now can get in front of a camera, say what they want, and the whole world just believes them with no evidence. And, you know, I feel like there's two ways you can take it, isn't it? You can, you know, cry about it and moan, or, don't know, send a lawyer, or you can just roll with it, enjoy it. And, you know, it was a bit of a joke back to the fans and to the people who say whatever they want. And yeah, for me, I know the truth. I know what really goes on in my personal life. I know what I give to the game, what I give in the games, and what I try and give to the team. All the outside noise is just it doesn't really matter, but it's nice to have a little bit of a joke.
Finally, you scored.
They listened to the words of Jude Bellingham speak about his goal celebration yesterday. But for one side, nothing seems so rosy at this point in time. 3 games and no victory. That's for Manchester City. Let's take a listen to Elliot Brotaland speak about their 3-1 loss to the Ant of Bodo Glimt yesterday.
Do you think you got wrong as a collective team this evening?
I don't know. We do our best, but there's something that's missing, obviously, and I take full responsibility together with Rodri, Gigio, you know, Tijani, as experienced players. I don't want to blame anyone, but we need to take more responsibility because in the end it's not good enough. I apologize to everyone, every single Man City supporter and every single supporter that travelled today, because in the end it's embarrassing. And I mean, both they played some incredible football, and in the end it's deserved. So what I can say is sorry.
You listen to not Jude Bellingham now, Erling Haaland speak about that. But quickly, Manchester City, what a time it is that they are going through. And there is this question also as regards Pep Guardiola. A lot of people have said this man, he ought to have left the game since last season when the cracks were so evident in his that approach to the game and also his team crumbling. But this season also we've seen glimpses of Manchester City performing so well, but just all of a sudden they are back to a default setting in which we are not used to seeing.
Well, for Manchester City, the first side to ever lose to a Norwegian side from England, Bodo Glimt got their first ever win in the UEFA Champions League yesterday, and it is against the almighty Manchester City, against the almighty Pep Guardiola. Good for the Norwegian side, who have been performing so well in the world of football over the last 3 or 4 years. The quarter-final of the Conference League, the semi-final of the Europa League last season, and now they defeated Manchester City, and they still have a chance to qualify for the playoff round of the UEFA Champions League. So Manchester City, that was a very, very terrible performance from them yesterday. I was watching the game. I was at the office watching the game yesterday evening, and I was just shaking my head for Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. They look so porous at the back. If you watch the first 2 goals Bodo Glimt scored, so it was more of the same goals. They break, City were the one playing the football, then they just break on the counter-attack. Got the first goal, a mistake from the young defender who was having his Champions League debut. He was just called up from Watford some weeks ago. He made a mistake that led to the second goal. But the way they played, the way they've been playing this year so far has been bad. And I have a conspiracy theory that Rodri is the problem of this team. Yeah, I have that conspiracy theory. And I'm saying this because he got back into this team at the start of the year. At the beginning of this year, he got back into this team. And the 2 games City have won this year, because in 2026, City have only won 2 games. And the 2 games they won against Newcastle United, it didn't start. Against Exeter in the FA Cup, you expect them to win that game. In the Premier League, they played 4 games with Rodri. They've not won any game. They lost to Chelsea's under 21 coach. They look like they don't know how to get things around themselves again. And before Rodri get back into this team, City were winning games. They look like a team that we all believe they were back. At that time, they were pushing us now in the league, and everybody feels like City is back, even though they were conceding goals. But at a point in time, after that 5-4 game against Fulham, they started winning games. They won convincingly against Sunderland. They won games convincingly, with Nico Gonzalez getting well into the team, Nico O'Reilly, Matheus Nunes from the left side of the back. Everybody was playing well. And all of a sudden, Rodri got back. Everybody lost their touch. Erling Haaland is also a man that is out of form at the moment. In the last 8 games, they have only scored 1 goal. And the goal he scored was a penalty. Ireland have not scored in 8 games. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've seen this with him since he came into the Premier League. So it's not. It looks like nothing is working for them, and no one else is scoring. The only other person in this team that looks like someone that can get goals at the moment is 𝐿𝐿. He's the only one who has been trying to build them out, and the only goal they scored yesterday was also from him.
All right. So, for Manchester City, let's see what they would pull up that later this weekend at the Etihad against the Wolverhampton Wanderers in the English Premier League. But later today, Chelsea Football Club, they'll be in action in the UEFA Champions League against Pafos. And for Rosenio, it would be his first game in charge of Chelsea Football Club in the UEFA Champions League. But you ask me, the biggest game for tonight happens to be the game between Galatasaray and Atletico de Madrid. A lot of people might want to say Marseille against Liverpool is also one game to look out for, or Atlanta against Atletico Bilbao. But I know what the Turkish fans can be like against a top Spanish opponent. That's Galatasaray against Atletico de Madrid.
Well, for me personally, the biggest game today has to be the Marseille-Liverpool game, and the next one has to be the Juventus-Benfica game, because Jose Mourinho going back to Italy, we know how that can be at the Juventus Stadium. But then, if you feel Galatasaray and Atletico Madrid is the biggest, your opinion, the game looks big as well, because when you look at the way Galatasaray have been this season in the UEFA Champions League, we've seen them take out the big guys. You saw what they did to Liverpool when they defeated Liverpool, and we know how their fans can be when it comes to the Turkish league. Atletico Madrid this season have not really been convincing for me. They've not played that well, and I feel like it's becoming a normal thing for Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid. He does not have a target. He's just there to just do the coaching job there. Just take this team to the Champions League. They don't care about where they get knocked out again. It is in the past they do care. Okay, we get to the semi-final, we go to the final. These days I don't think they care. The hierarchy of that team just leave this man in charge. They just sign for him and they don't ask questions. So he can do whatsoever he wants. In Turkey today, I don't see Atletico Madrid getting all 3 points in that game. Galatasaray too have not been good, but now they have their Banksman back. They have Victor Osimhen back. But before, he couldn't play the last game for the Super Eagles of Nigeria against South Africa because, according to reports, he had an ankle issue. We don't know how fit he is at the moment, because after he left camp on Saturday after the game, he went to Lagos for a party, and he didn't wait to receive his medal on Sunday when the final went on. But then we never can tell if he start this game or if he come off the bench. But this game is a game where I don't see Galatasaray losing.
Well, you don't see Galatasaray losing this encounter, but you're talking about Chelsea. What will Rosenio? What will it bring to this club side? As we definitely have to leave based on that conversation. We just need to leave. Rosenio for Chelsea against the Pafos.
I expect Chelsea to win, but Chelsea is inconsistent. You never can predict them. We saw what they did against Karabag. But today at home, Rosenio's first Champions League game. I saw Abelua's first Champions League game yesterday as well. He won 6-1. I expect Rosenio to win as well.
All right, thanks so much to everyone who has joined us on today's edition of the show. We'll come your way again, and that's later tomorrow, 9:15 a.m. through 9:30 to discuss the latest updates from the world of sport. The Australian Open, the UEFA Champions League, and other headlines making the rounds in the world of sport. I am SAMIES, your sports captain, as I've done this alongside DOLAPO. Do enjoy the rest of the day, and bye for now.